Good evening, everyone. So let's start. Biliary atresia is the fibroinflammatory obstruction of extrahepatic ducts. It is an obstructive fibroinflammatory cholangiopathy affecting infants. It was first described by John Thomson in 1892. It may involve any or all portions of the extrahepatic biliary system. It causes a progressive obstruction of. So extrahepatic biliary atresia or biliary atresia is an obstructive fibroinflammatory cholangiopathy affecting infants. It was first described by John Thomson in 1892. It may involve any or all portions of the extrahepatic biliary system. It causes a progressive obstruction of the biliary tree, leading to cholestasis, cirrhosis, and ultimately death within the first several years of life if left untreated. Only two surgical interventions have been developed that may alter the course of the disease. That is the Kasai hepatoportoenterostomy and liver transplantation. During the 1950s and 60s, Morio Kasai, a Japanese surgeon, developed a more radical approach to the dissection of the porta hepatis, exposing the residual bile ductules that were microscopic yet patent. The first liver transplant was performed in Denver, Colorado by Thomas Starzl in March 1963 on a 3-year-old boy who had been born with biliary atresia. Biliary atresia is the most common diagnosis leading to liver transplantation in children. It is a rare disease with a prevalence that varies worldwide. Most commonly observed in East Asian countries, with a reported incidence as high as 1 in 5,000 to 10,000 live births. Studies from Western nations, notably France, the United Kingdom, and the United States, have estimated the incidence of biliary atresia to range from 1 in 14,000 to 19,000 live births. Certain ethnicities seem to be more predisposed than others. Specifically within Asian populations, Chinese infants seem to be particularly at risk. Studies within the United States have shown that the incidence of biliary atresia among African American infants is twice that of Caucasian infants. Although there are reports of familial biliary atresia, such cases are the exception rather than the rule. It typically arises spontaneously within families. Interestingly, studies of twins in which one twin was diagnosed with biliary atresia have failed to demonstrate concordance for the disease. With only 2 sets of dizygotic twins out of 30 monozygotic and dizygotic twin pairs studied, demonstrating biliary atresia in both infants. Epidemiologically, studies have failed to demonstrate an association between infant birth weight, prematurity, and maternal factors such as smoking, age, alcohol use, education, gravity, and parity in the development of biliary atresia. Several studies have identified seasonal variations in the incidence across regions within the United States. However, epidemiologic studies from Europe and Asia have failed to show such seasonal variation. The association with certain syndromes and congenital malformations, as well as higher prevalence within certain populations, led to the speculations that there may be a genetic cause underlying this disease. Recent work, such as mutations in JAG1, a Notch signaling ligand, and the left-right patterning gene nodal cofactor cryptic CFC1, among others, as associated with patients with either isolated or syndromic biliary atresia. To date, however, no identified mutation has been shown to cause biliary atresia in animal models, thereby underscoring the importance of the interplay between genes and the environment. Histologically, the livers of infants with biliary atresia show significant inflammatory response with a diverse cellular infiltration noted predominantly around the portal tracts, including cell lineages from both the innate and adaptive immune systems. These cellular infiltrates are primarily composed of CD4+ and CD8+ T cells, natural killer cells, mast cells, and Kupffer cells. These diverse populations work in conjunction to promote a pro-inflammatory Th1 response, ultimately leading to increased production of interleukin-2, interferon gamma, and tumor necrosis factor alpha. Many cytokines, including interleukin-2, interferon gamma, tumor necrosis factor alpha, interleukin-4 and 18, continue to rise following the hepaticoportoenterostomy. Thus, some speculate that restoration of biliary drainage does not ameliorate the inflammatory response. The expression of 2 soluble cell adhesion molecules, the interstitial cell adhesion molecule 1 and vascular cell adhesion molecule 1, have been shown to have some clinical relevance, namely the increased plasma levels of soluble vascular cell adhesion molecule 1 have been detected in patients with end-stage biliary atresia. Elevated soluble interstitial cell adhesion molecule 1 levels have shown to positively correlate not only with serum bilirubin levels, but also for the need of liver transplantation within the first year of life. These are the molecules described. Some suggest autoimmune mechanism in the etiology. Analysis of the T cell receptor variable region of the beta chain of lymphocytes resident within these tissues have demonstrated a limited repertoire. This suggests that T cells within the liver and biliary remnants of these patients are undergoing oligoclonal expansion to a specific antigen. Some researchers propose a primary autoimmune response to antigens within the biliary system, within the biliary epithelium. Others suggest infection with a hepatotrophic virus, such as cytomegalovirus, reovirus, or rotavirus, as the instigating event. The viral hypothesis of biliary atresia was first proposed by Benjamin Landig in 1974. It was based primarily on findings that certain molecules common to the innate immune system, such as the toll-like receptors, are upregulated in patients with biliary atresia in a manner similar to the immune response mounted following viral infection. Virus-induced biliary autoimmunity and molecular mimicry have both been hypothesized as the driving force behind the antigen-specific lymphocyte proliferation seen in affected tissues of patients with biliary atresia. Many infants are exposed prenatally and postnatally to hepatotrophic viruses, but biliary atresia develops in only a small fraction. This causes some to speculate that there may be, in fact, some underlying genetic susceptibility for this disease following an inciting exposure. This hypothesis has been supported by work that has identified polymorphisms in genes that regulate the metabolism of inflammatory cytokines, as well as contribute to the development of biliary fibrosis. Maternal microchimerism has also been implicated as a means of immune-mediated damage. Several studies showed that biliary atresia have a higher number of maternally derived CD8 plus T cells resident within their livers. The activation of this population by paternal antigens in the fetal liver and biliary system has been proposed as a potential etiology for biliary atresia. Concordant with this mechanism, studies of transplant outcomes following living-related liver transplants have shown reduced incidences of graft failure and refractory rejection in patients with biliary atresia receiving maternal allografts when compared to those receiving a paternal liver. This maternal microchimerism is a novel mechanism of immune damage that has been suggested based on the observation that male biliary atresia infants have a threefold increase in maternal origin cells in their livers. These were later shown to be maternal origin chimeric CD8 plus T cells and CD45 natural killer cells and appear capable of initiating immune cholangiolar damage. This phenomenon has been termed maternal microchimerism. The phenotypical classification, there are 4 types. The first one is the biliary atresia splenic malformation syndrome, cystic biliary atresia, cytomegalovirus associated biliary atresia, and isolated biliary atresia. Biliary atresia splenic malformation syndrome. It encompasses biliary atresia, splenic anomalies, usually polysplenia, vascular anomalies, usually a preduodenal portal vein, and the absence of vena cava, visceral asymmetry, usually situs inversus, and cardiac anomalies. This shows polysplenia, a preduodenal portal vein, and situs inversus. You can see the liver shadow on the right side. So the abnormalities associated are polysplenia or a double spleen, asplenia, situs inversus, preduodenal portal vein, malrotation, cardiac anomalies, absent IVC, annular pancreas, asplenia, and immotile cilia syndrome. These are the various frequencies. For these peculiar anomalies to occur together, there must be some insult operating at a critical level during embryonic development. Higher incidence of early trimester problems in those where the offspring had BASM versus otherwise isolated biliary atresia, including a marked association with maternal diabetes and possibly in vitro fertilization. The formation of the extrahepatic duct occurs from 20 to 38 days in tandem with key events in the formation of the heart spleen, determination of the situs, and so forth. At operation, these infants typically have no common bile duct, a tiny atrophic gallbladder, and no evidence of inflammatory response. The liver is also usually symmetrical, whatever the nature of the abdominal situs. Despite the protracted timeline, the liver parenchyma appears entirely normal at birth. The Basem variant is the variant that seems most likely to have an underlying genetic defect, although it is not a straightforward Mendelian one. Mutations in the CFC1 gene located on chromosome 2q21.1 loci were found in 50% of infants with Basem in one French study, but the same pattern was also observed in a high proportion of normal controls. The gene itself encodes for cryptic protein, which is related to heterotaxy, which is the abnormal states of visceral position or movement, also situs ambiguous, and cardiac anomalies, such as the transposition of the great vessels and double outlet right ventricle. And they may also have a role in mesoderm and neural patterning during gastrulation. This is the heterotaxy spectrum. It can range from situs solitus through right atrial isomerism syndrome, left atrial isomerism syndrome, up to situs inversus. These are the common cardiac anomalies associated. You have the transposition of the great vessels. That is, the aorta will drain the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery the left ventricle, or a double outlet right ventricle with both the great vessels draining from the right ventricle. A smaller number of infants with Basem have immotile cilia syndrome, that is the cartilaginous syndrome, which provides an interesting speculation about its mechanism. Dysfunctional cilia could be incriminated in determination of the visceral situs, but how cilial dysfunction interacts with the developing biliary tree is not known. There are other syndromic associations which are not within the Basem spectrum. Thus, a relationship with the cat eye syndrome has been reported, characterized by coloboma, anorectal atresia, and chromosome 22 aneuploidy. Other more common congenital abnormalities such as esophageal atresia, jejunal atresia, anorectal malformations arise more commonly than would be expected by chance in infants with otherwise isolated biliary atresia. The second type is the cystic biliary atresia. It accounts for about 10% of all the cases. It is caused by extrahepatic cystic formation in an otherwise obliterated biliary tree. The cyst may be filled with bile or mucus, depending on the degree of preservation of the connection with the intrahepatic ducts. The largest cysts can be detected antenatally. This is a cystic variant of biliary atresia. It is important that this type of biliary atresia is not confused postnatally with an early obstructing choledochal malformation. Precise diagnosis can only be confirmed at surgery with the cholangiogram. Various patterns of intrahepatic ducts can be recognized, including that of a grossly abnormal, irregular, pruned tree, or it can have a cloud-like appearance caused by multiple interconnections of the filamentous intrahepatic biliary ductules. There does not appear to be any ethnic or genetic predilection, but there is undoubtedly a better outcome following Kasai's photointroscopy. This is an example of an intraoperative cholangiogram being done. The third type is the cytomegalovirus associated biliary atresia. The proposal that viruses may be responsible for numerous infantile cholestatic conditions is credited to Benjamin Landing, an American pathologist. The earliest focus was on reovirus type 3, and serological studies seem to show an increased frequency of positivity in infants compared with those with neonatal hepatitis. Other viruses suggested include human papillomavirus, Epstein-Barr virus, cytomegalovirus, and rotavirus. The Hanover group looked at 74 infants with biliary atresia and screened for a panel of 11 viruses. A minority of these infants showed evidence of intrahepatic viral RNA or DNA. This group, however, concluded that viruses were not the main players in the etiology of biliary atresia, but were merely a secondary phenomenon and did not influence prognosis in any way. Fisher et al. From Sweden first showed a higher prevalence of anti-cytomegalovirus antibodies in the mothers of biliary atresia infants and higher serum cytomegalovirus immunoglobulin M levels in infants with biliary atresia. They also described greater amounts of immunoglobulin deposits on the canalicular membrane of the hepatocytes in infants with biliary atresia with ongoing CMV infection. Cytomegalovirus is a double-stranded DNA virus of the herpes viridae family that can infect biliary epithelial cells and hepatocytes, and occasionally, but not commonly, where CMV inclusion bodies can be seen. CMV-positive biliary atresia patients had much less effect from Kasai's portoenterostomy than with isolated biliary atresia. This translated into markedly reduced survival. There is a potential for antiviral therapy in addition to the surgery for these infants. Adjuvant ganciclovir, although no convincing studies which have been published to date, it is possible that the virus acts as a trigger, activating an immune-mediated destructive process during the immediate perinatal period. In mice, this is facilitated by a reduction in regulatory T cells and the inflammatory cascade. The fourth type is the isolated biliary atresia. It is the largest group for which there is no clear etiological mechanism at work. It may still be a developmental problem, but must have later onset in fetal life than those with BASM, as no other system or organ is affected. One hypothesis is that intra and extrahepatic bile ducts develop from different sources with differing time scales. So the linkage must occur to provide for luminal bile duct patency from the canalicular membrane to the duodenum. This is achieved at 10 to 12 weeks of gestation, and if this is disturbed, perhaps biliary atresia is one of the consequences. In a study by Tan et al., sections of the porta of normal fetuses at 12 weeks gestations were compared with porta resections from infants with biliary atresia. They proved to be remarkably similar, suggesting developmental arrest. Alternatively, bile ducts may form completely normally in the first trimester, but obliteration occurs at some later stage, possibly even postnatally. This may be associated with a possible neonatal hepatitis type picture, or postnatal destruction of the extrahepatic biliary tree could occur secondary to an ischemic insult affecting the bile ducts or following a bile duct perforation. However, in these cases, the intrahepatic ductules dilate, which does not occur in the two biliary atresia cases. Some studies have found low levels of the hepatic-specific enzyme, gamma-glutamyl transpeptidase, in amniotic fluid in the second trimester levels in infants, who later turned out to have biliary atresia. There are other less developed hypotheses on etiology, including maternal microchimerism, and a recently developed one based on an environmental toxin, biliatrisone, identified in sheep and cattle. So this is what it is about. In the hot summer of 1963, the water level in the Burrinjuck Dam in Australia fell, which exposed the foreshore and an abnormal proliferation of the red crumbweed. This is the red crumbweed. Sheep were allowed to graze here, and during the next lambing season, it became apparent that a huge proportion of the lambs had developed biliary atresia. This was repeated during subsequent years and occasionally affected cattle as well. Peter Windsor, an Australian veterinary surgeon, collected the weed and passed it on to Michael Pack in Philadelphia, who isolated what was believed to be the toxic isoflavonoid component and named it biliatrisone. This was tested in a zebrafish model and found to target and damage the developing bile ducts and gallbladder. Whether it is a genuine cause in human biliary atresia remains unknown, but there are plants related to the red crumbweed already in the human diet, including chard and beetroot. Biliary atresia could be considered as a final common pathway or phenotype with a number of causative factors, etiological heterogeneity. Some of these may be developmental, that is cystic biliary atresia and BASM, and include some in the isolated group. Others may be perinatal in origin and related to viral damage, although the cytomegalovirus work would suggest a figure of only around 10%. Another factor which might be important, although difficult to prove, is a possible genetic susceptibility to biliary atresia. The ADD3 has been suggested in some Chinese infants. This is the pathogenesis. So you can have congenital hepatic embryopathy with a first trimester insult, such as maternal diabetes. That is in the case of BASM syndrome. Cystic biliary atresia with a possible second trimester insult. And due to genetic factors, there may be tryptic factor 1 mutations with susceptibility genes such as ADD3, which cause isolated biliary atresia with no etiological features. Perinatally, viral infection, and there may be immune damage, which leads to biliary atresia. Biliary atresia is an occlusive pandactylar cholangiopathy which in most infants is probably present at birth. This is contentious. Progression of the condition results in cholestasis, hepatic fibrosis, and ultimately cirrhosis. The histological appearance of the liver is characterized by portal tract edema, bile duct plugging and proliferation, a small cell infiltrate, and occasionally giant cell formation. Immunohistochemical appearance is characterized by an abnormal expression of class II antigens in about 1/3 and cytokines such as intracellular adhesion molecule, predominantly on the biliary epithelium, and vascular cell adhesion molecule, predominantly on the sinusoidal endothelium. The Japanese classification, which is used by most centers throughout the world, is used to describe the microscopic appearance of the extrahepatic ducts. It is based on the level of the most proximal obstruction. So type 1, which constitutes 5%, the most proximal obstruction is at the level of CBD, which is often associated with the cyst, which therefore should contain bile. The gallbladder should also contain bile. Type 2, which is 2%, the common hepatic duct is the most proximal obstruction. Transaction of the most proximal porta hepatis should show both right and left ducts to contain bile. Type 3, which is the most common, accounting for more than 90%, the transaction of the porta hepatis should not show any remnant bile ducts, these being microscopic. They show the preservation of multiple biliary ductules. Type 3 subdivided on the basis of the distal remnants into 1, 2, and 3. You have patent CBD and usually mucocele of gallbladder in the first type. The second type has intact but obliterated distal bile ducts. And the third type has an absent CBD and usually atrophic gallbladder. So this is type 1, where the most proximal obstruction is at the level of the common bile duct. Here, the most proximal obstruction is at the level of the common hepatic duct. So both the hepatic duct should contain bile. And in this case, the gallbladder as well as the cyst should contain bile. In type 3, the most proximal obstruction is at the level of the porta. So they should not contain any bile. In type 3A, there is mucocele and patent CBD. Type 3B, which we most commonly encounter, is the fibrous intact remnant. And in type 3C, there is absent CBD. Clinical features. Infants with biliary atresia invariably have a conjugated jaundice, a dark urine, and pale ecolic stools. When asked, these signs are usually discernible from the time of birth. Birth weight and gestational age are usually normal for both those with BASM and those with isolated biliary atresia. And initially, infants feed apparently normally, although their weight gain is subnormal. Liver is usually enlarged and firm, and in older infants, there may be ascites or splenomegaly indicating portal hypertension. Low intestinal bile salt levels interrupt the vitamin K absorption, leading to a coagulopathy and raised INR levels. Bleeding may therefore be a presenting feature before the underlying biliary pathology is recognized. Sometimes this is relatively trivial, such as persistent bleeding of the umbilical stump, but it can be serious and catastrophic with an intracerebral hemorrhage. Vitamin D levels are also low due to the same mechanism. Radiological evaluation. Although ultrasonography is rarely diagnostic for biliary atresia, it remains an important and necessary tool in the workup of suspected cases, as it helps differentiate biliary atresia from other anatomic causes of neonatal jaundice. Common findings seen in patients with biliary atresia include a shrunken gallbladder despite fasting and lack of intrahepatic bile ducts, the presence of hyperechogenic hilum on ultrasound, or the triangular cord sign, which has also been reported in patients with biliary atresia, some studies citing high diagnostic accuracy of approximately 80% and greater. This triangular cord sign is a triangular or a tubular echogenic cord of fibrous tissue seen in the porta hepatis at ultrasound and is relatively specific for the diagnosis of biliary atresia. It is defined as more than 4 millimeter thickness of the echogenic anterior wall of the right portal vein, measured on a longitudinal ultrasound scan. Triangular cords. Additional imaging, namely the hepatobiliary immunodiacetic acid scan, offer a means of assessing the biliary excretion. Although a lack of bile excretion into the intestine on HEDA scan is consistent with biliary atresia, it is not diagnostic, as several factors may limit the effectiveness of this study. Notably, infants with severe cases of hepatitis may exhibit impaired radiotracer uptake and thus have limited excretion into the bowel. Additionally, some infants with the condition may initially demonstrate some flow of radiotracer into the duodenum, with gradual obliteration of this tract later in the disease. In light of this diagnostic uncertainty, magnetic resonance cholangiopancreatography is used. This technique's ability to provide more detailed definition of the biliary is used. In fact, several studies have shown that non-visualization of the extrahepatic biliary on MRCP may be diagnostic for biliary atresia, reported sensitivity and specificity greater than 90%. Despite these advancements in non-invasive imaging of the hepatobiliary anatomy, intraoperative cholangiography remains the gold standard for diagnosing biliary atresia. Although endoscopic retrograde cholangiopancreatography may be possible, equipment and expertise in performing ERCP in infants is limited. Preoperative liver biopsy has become an increasingly safe and used method to help exclude other causes of neonatal jaundice. Although percutaneous liver biopsy is highly accurate, there are no histological findings that are pathognomic for biliary atresia. Findings suggestive of biliary atresia include portal or bridging fibrosis, bile duct proliferation, inflammation, or giant cell hepatitis. Some of these may not be evident on samples taken from very young infants, thereby necessitating repeat biopsy at a later date. So if there is conjugated jaundice, a clinical check is done, history of pale stools and dark urine is taken, hepatomegaly is assessed, and ascites is noted. Liver biochemistry, which shows increased bilirubin, in total bilirubin more than 100 micromoles per liter, or increased gamma glutamyl transpeptidase more than 100 international units per liter. Liver ultrasound shows the absence of intrahepatic dilatation, small irregular gallbladder, cyst formation, or dilated extrahepatic bile ducts may suggest a cystic variation or type 1 biliary atresia. ERCP is indicated if histology is non-diagnostic, typically if there is failure to opacify bile ducts at all, or to show only CBD and gallbladder. And liver biopsy shows cholestasis, portal tract edema, bile duct plugging and proliferation, small cell infiltration, and variable giant cell formation. It is diagnostic in 80%. So the various surgical causes of conjugated jaundice in infancy include biliary atresia, choledochal cyst, inspissated bile syndrome, spontaneous perforation of the bile duct, tumors, lymph node enlargement, and gallstones. So the surgery of Kasai photointrostomy has been described. The incision is the right-sided muscle cutting to cross midline. The diagnosis is confirmed by inspection. No bile or only clear mucus and gallbladder is noted. Equivocal features indicate the need for an operative cholangiogram. A purse string is taken through the gallbladder. A 4 French feeding tube is inserted. Other anomalies, for example, polysplenia, preduodenal portal vein, and situs absent IVC are noted. The degree of liver damage is assessed, whether there is overt cirrhosis and whether there is portal hypertension. Mobilization of the liver is done by dividing the falciform ligament and the left triangular ligaments only. The liver is delivered and everted into the wound. The next phase is the porta hepatis dissection. The gallbladder is mobilized and the hepatic arteries are identified with slings around the distal CBD. The CBD is divided between ligatures and it is then dissected towards the porta hepatis. Mobilization of the duct remnants from bifurcation of the portal vein is done. Ligation of small veins with 5-0 bilateral sutures supplying the porta and part of the caudal lobe is done. Right side dissection should show the bifurcation into anterior and posterior vascular pedicles. Left side dissection is facilitated by dividing the spur of the liver, linking the segments 4 and 3 to allow the origin of the umbilical vein from the left portal vein to be displaced. This is the recess of Rex. The resulting pyramidal cone of remnant bile ducts should measure at least 2 centimeters in diameter from right to left. Sharp dissection using combination of blade and curved sharp pointed scissors at transition between remnants and liver at the level of the capsule. It is pointless to dissect into the liver parenchyma. Any residual tissue should be almost transparent. So this is the initial incision. It is assessed whether it is feasible or not. And this is the extension for Kasai's procedure. And if liver transplant is to be done, this is the extension. The rule loop is prepared. The measurement of the rule loop is around 40 to 50 centimeters anti-mesenteric. Division of the jejunum 5 to 10 centimeters from the DJ flexure with a gastrointestinal linear stapler is done. End-to-side enteroenterostomy using a single lead 5-0 suture or stapler is done. A mesocolic window is created to the right of the middle colic artery. Portoenterostomy is done in the next phase. The rule loop should have adequate length to reach the porta without any tension. Portoenterostomy using 6-0 sutures placed back row first, that is the posterior row first, is placed untied and the loop is parachuted down to the porta. So this is the porta. The posterior layer is done first. You take sutures from both the ends and it is left untied until this anastomosis is complete. And after leaving this untied, the whole loop is parachuted. All the sutures are taken simultaneously and parachuted into the lower lip of the porta, and they are subsequently tied. Sutures should be avoided to be placed in the extreme right or left of the porta hepatis, but adventitia on the surrounding vessels should be used instead. The anterior row is then completed. The mesocolic window is closed around the rule loop. Wound is closed in layers. For most infants with biliary atresia, an attempt should be made to restore bile flow with a Kasai's portoenterostomy. There is a dearth of preoperative predictors of success, including the age at surgery, and none with absolute discrimination. The groups which do have a worse prognosis are those coming to surgery at more than 100 days of age, those with other malformations, those with CMV positive, IgM positive biliary atresia, whereas infants with cystic biliary atresia and low AST to platelet ratio index values have a better outlook. So this shows the dissection is done. This is the Rex fossa. Adjuvant postoperative therapy. Postoperative corticosteroids have been the subject of a number of studies since first described in anecdotal form in the 1980s. First randomized placebo-controlled trial from London and Leeds did show a significant early biochemical benefit, that is a reduced serum bilirubin. But there is no statistical difference in the need for transplant and ultimately clearance of jaundice using a low dose of oral prednisolone for 1 month postoperatively. A follow-up study from London using a higher initial dose, that is 5 milligram per kg per day, showed a statistically significant increase in the proportion who had cleared their jaundice from 52 to 67%. Now let's talk about the outcomes and results of this surgery. The earliest measurable outcome is clearance of jaundice. Recently reported clearance rates to normal bilirubin values, that is less than 20 micromoles per liter, within 6 months in large. Typically, multi-center series have varied from 27 to 57%, with translation into 5 or 4 year native liver survival of 37 to 52% for the most recent cohorts. It is still the most common indication for liver transplant during childhood and was initially used for older survivals of the Kasai operation with life-threatening complications such as variceal bleeding and chronic liver failure. However, with increasing experience in transplantation, early liver replacement has been undertaken in infants who have no response to portoenterostomy. The specific complications following portoenterostomy are ascending cholangitis. They present with features of increasing jaundice and pyrexia. They should be managed with antibiotics. Portal hypertension with ascites. It shows abdominal distension, hydrocele hernias. Spironolactone or ascitic tapping should be done. Esophageal varices, which present with gastrointestinal bleeding and anemia. Endoscopy with sclerotherapy or banding should be done. The hepatopulmonary syndrome presents with cyanosis. This indicates liver transplant. End-stage liver failure presents with increasing jaundice, malnutrition, increased INR, decreased albumin, and sepsis. Correction of nutritional depletion, for example, by nasogastric feeding, should be done, and liver transplant should be considered. So this is the protocol which was given to us by the pediatric gastroenterologist at our institute. This is the pre and post Kasai surgery protocol. Pre-op management should be initiated 24 to 48 hours prior to surgery. Injection piperacillin with tazobactam 80 to 100 mg per kg per dose should be administered starting 24 hours prior to the surgery. Oral gut decontamination should be started 48 hours prior with lactulose 5 milliliters twice a day, Metrogyl at a rate, the dose of 7.5 milligram per kg per dose thrice a day. Injection gentamicin 2.5 mg per kg per dose thrice a day. Post-op care, pain relief should be provided by paracetamol suppositories at 15 milligram per kg per dose, TDS, or 4 times a day. Injection fentanyl may be given 1 microgram per kg per dose, SOS. Antibiotics used should include cefotaxime 150 milligram per kg per day, thrice a day for 5 to 7 days. Amikacin at the rate of 15 milligram per kg per dose once a day over a 1 hour infusion for 5 to 7 days. Second line treatment is given with injection piperacillin tazobactam at the same dose as mentioned earlier, and meropenem at 20 milligram per kg per dose thrice a day. Injection ranitidine 2 to 4 milligram per kg per day intravenously, which is followed by syrup ranitidine orally twice a day. Drain replacement should be done by fresh frozen plasma. This is preferred, or 5% albumin at 10 ml per kg per day for the first 2 days, then milliliter by milliliter replacement as per the need. Oral feeds after return of bowel sounds on day 2 to 3. Oral medications such as ursodeoxycholic acid, 10 milligram per kg per dose twice a day plus supplements. The monitoring should include abdominal girth 8 to 12 Tali, random blood sugars 4 to 6 Tali, electrolytes and venous blood gas analysis on day 1, complete blood count, albumin on day 2, liver function test as per need. If there is any evidence of infection, that is fever or high WBC count, a blood or urine culture should be sent. CBC, LFT, and C-reactive protein or procalcitonin should be sent. Ultrasound abdomen should be done. Drain, total count, differential count should be done with culture, and the antibiotic should be upgraded. Antibiotic prophylaxis should be started on post-op days 7 to 14 with syrup cefixime 5 milligram per kg per dose once a day for 4 weeks, alternated with syrup ofloxacin 7.5 milligram per kg per dose once a day, or syrup Septran 4 mg per kg per dose once a day every 4 weeks. Steroid protocol should be started after day 7. Syrup prednisolone 2 milligram per kg per day in 2 divided doses for 14 days, followed by gradual taper over the next 6 weeks. Long-term care includes monitoring for cholangitis, endoscopy for portal hypertension, ultrasound abdomen monthly for 3 months, then yearly to monitor cirrhosis and malignancies. The SpO2 level should be checked 6 monthly for hepatopulmonary syndrome, especially in BASM cases. Liver damage, liver disease should be assessed by monitoring the growth and liver function test and ultrasound abdomen. Pediatric end-stage liver disease score should be done regularly with the option of liver transplant. Postoperative cholangitis is managed as follows. A septic screen should be done. Intravenous antibiotics with cefotaxime, amikacin should be done and upgraded accordingly. If the temperature does not settle after 5 days, or if it returns on discontinuation of antibiotics, ascitic tapping should be done and a liver biopsy should be done for bacteriological culture, and further therapy should be based on the culture and sensitivity. Second line antibiotics is with piperacillin tazobactam or meropenem with or without vancomycin. This is a pediatric end-stage liver disease score. It is calculated with this following equation. It takes into account the following factors. Age less than 1, a score of 1 is given. Age more than 1, score of 0 is given. Growth failure, growth greater than standard deviations below mean, score of 1. And growth with less than 2 standard deviations below mean, score of 0 is given. It is based on the age, growth, and serum total bilirubin, international normalized ratio, and albumin. So we have some questions. Which of the following characterize post-op cholangitis? Is it liver function test, jaundice, fever, or all of the above? Abnormal liver function test, jaundice, fever, or all of the above? Anyone? So all of the above characterize cholangitis. It occurs in 30 to 50% of post-op patients. They present with fever and an abnormal liver function tests. Patient may also develop signs and symptoms characteristic of the presentation prior to the Kasai procedure, such as jaundice and acolic stools. In this clinical scenario, patients need to be evaluated for sepsis. In the case of recurrent cholangitis with resultant liver decompensation, the next treatment step is likely a liver transplant. The following are helpful in diagnosing biliary atresia except which of the following? Decreased albumin, decreased ALT, elevated aspartate transaminase, or an elevated glutamyl transcriptase. So decreased alanine transaminase is not seen. We have an increase in aspartate transaminase, alanine transaminase, increase in conjugated bilirubin, total bilirubin, and gamma glutamyl transcriptase. It is also associated with malnutrition and decrease in albumin. Which of the following have not been shown to have a prognostic value in the success of Kasai's procedure? Presence of cirrhosis, age of patient at time of procedure, biliary diversion, or polysplenia. So cirrhosis does have a prognostic effect. It has a poor outcome. Age does have a prognostic effect. It also has a poorer outcome with increasing age. Polysplenia also has a effect on the success. But biliary diversion does not. It has not been shown to have prognostic value in determining the success. Improved outcomes are associated with increased surgeon experience and decreased patient rate at the time of the surgery. Worse outcomes are associated with polysplenia and presence of cirrhosis. Which of the following is an indication for liver transplant after a successful Kasai procedure? Is it elevated total bilirubin, polysplenia, refractory variceal bleeding, or all of the above? Anyone? Okay, so the answer is refractory variceal bleeding. This is an indication of severe portal hypertension and cirrhosis. It is an indication to proceed to liver transplant. Elevated bilirubin in itself is not an indication for liver transplant. Polysplenia is associated with worse outcomes after Kasai, but is not by itself an indication for liver transplant. Cholangitis in itself is not an indication for liver transplant and can be managed conservatively with antibiotics. Which of the following agents has not been linked to biliary atresia? Is it hepatitis virus, human papilloma virus, rotavirus, or cytomegalovirus? Since there is a type associated with it, so cytomegalovirus is definitely linked. Rotavirus and human papilloma virus are also linked with biliary atresia. The hepatitis virus is not linked with biliary atresia. Which of the following, all of the following except one, mimic biliary atresia liver histology? Choledochal cyst, hepatocellular carcinoma, cystic fibrosis, TPN associated cholestasis. The answer is hepatocellular carcinoma. The results of liver biopsy are critical in diagnosing liver biliary atresia. Findings of liver biopsy in biliary atresia, as described earlier, are fibrosis, inflammation, and proliferation. These findings can also be associated with choledochal cysts, bile duct strictures and stones, total parenteral nutrition associated cholestasis, alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, cystic fibrosis, multiple drug-resistant deficiency, North American Indian childhood cirrhosis, and Alagille syndrome. The diagnosis relies on multiple aspects of the patient history and examination rather than on a single test to make the diagnosis. Which of the histological features can be seen with biliary atresia? Expansion of portal tracts with fibrosis, bile plugs in portal tracts, inflammatory cell infiltration, all of the above. So all of these can be seen in biliary atresia. Which is the most reliable method to differentiate between biliary atresia and idiopathic neonatal hepatitis? Anyone? So liver biopsy is the most sensitive to differentiate between. These are the references. Thank you.
Yeah, so the surgery that you described, the photoenterostomy technique that you described, is it the original Kasai or the extended Kasai, which we say right now?
This is what I found in the book. I'm not sure about extended.
This is actually the extended Kasai.
Okay.
which we say the extended Kasai, which is followed everywhere right now.
Okay. What is the difference?
So in the normal Kasai, they do not go up to the Rex recess on the left side and on the up to the bifurcation into anterior and posterior divisions on the right side.
Okay.
Morio Kasai originally described just at the portal plate, and he did not go to those limits on the right and left side. So what is described now is the extended Kasai, which we usually.
Okay.
Orko?
Yes, ma'am.
No, it was such a wonderful, and you made it so interesting by these questions. Biliary atresia was taught in such a easy way, and it was the only the questionnaire was so interesting, and it made everything so light, and it was very enriching and very very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Orko. It was wonderful. What is the role of photoduodenoscopy? As Saurav is asking.
Ma'am, photoduodenoscopy is also described, but it is associated with reflux. It takes a shorter duration of time. It avoids the complication of a double anastomosis, and also avoids the complication of having a loop which is brought out to the mesocolic window. So chances of obstruction there are also reduced, and it also decreases the chances of leak at the enteroenterostomy site.
Yes.
But it has an incidence of reflux.
So we are doing the photoduodenoscopy. So we'll follow up for the reflux.
Yes.
Latest Dr. Neeraj did 3 cases for photoduodenoscopy. So we'll look about these cases. Okay, very good.
Dr. Vikas is asking, the bile reflux is increased in case of photoduodenoscopy.
Yeah, so a point about photoduodenoscopy, it is said that photoduodenoscopy is more physiological than Roux-en-Y. But the only advantage that has been seen over decades of studies comparing both photoduodenoscopy and Roux-en-Y is that it has a shorter operative time, nothing else. And the incidence of reflux gastritis is exclusively seen in photoduodenoscopy and not in Roux-en-Y. So that is a big concern because it ultimately leads to many complications later on. And photoduodenoscopy was initially developed by Todani, and in 2001, when he on follow, when he found in one of his cases a girl who was 19 years old now, and she developed malignancy at the anastomotic site of photoduodenoscopy. So after that, he left doing photoduodenoscopy. He was one of the biggest advocates of photoduodenoscopy in the world since he developed the procedure. But after 2001, he also abandoned that procedure. So there is a trend to move ahead from photoduodenoscopy to Roux-en-Y everywhere now.
Thank you. If there is no further questions, I think we can conclude the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Orko.
Thank you. Thank you.